Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Binti Ithnin. I am an undergraduate student from IIUM with Matric number 2314548. Today, I'm presenting on my topic based on the book No Sex in the City, written by Randa Abdel Fattah, with the topic Muslim women's journey, specifically touch the themes of redefining power. So, for quick introduction, Randa Abdel Fattah is an Australian author who mostly written about Muslim experience, identity, and multiculturalism. So for this book, it touch on and focus on the narrator Asma, who is a modern Muslim woman, lives in Australia in the late 20, in her late 20s, uh, who is looking for her Mr. Right while remaining her cultural and religious values. So in this book there are many interesting points that related to our themes, to the themes redefining empowerment, and we can learn a lot from this book. For the first point that can be seen in this book is women empowerment. This point can be seen where Esma chose to have no sex before marriage instead of following this Western liberation. This statement becomes an argumentative statement as he does not follow the secular expectation or secular ideologies or even West, or we can see as Western ideologies. We can see in this book in chapter 1 in excerpt, she saying, I'm 28, I'm doing a personalized checklist, preparing for a love life, and most definitely not having sex in the city. This proves her strong persuasion to have no sex with marriage and choose to have a dating life by blind date to have to find a marriage. For the second point, we can see in the book where she said she doesn't need a man in her life. In chapter 7, she said, I'm not one of those girls who needs a man to complete her. If that was the case, I would have settled for the first 5 or 10 guys I have met or be set up with. This shows the feminism element from her statement. Okay. You can see these examples to the Islamic perspective. In Islamic perspective, Esma's choice to remain her chastity shows her act of devotion to the faith. She chose to practice the command where we need to guard our chastity and no fornication. We can also see many Quranic verses and hadiths about this. So in Surah for example, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, verse 5, and they who guard their private parts. And in they, the word they here is they who did are modest in every sense in the word. They are free from sex abuse and sex repression. A point where she chose marriage instead of sex out of marriage that shows her respect to her own dignity. The second point that can be seen in this book is identity empowerment. We can see in our narrator Esma, where she is an Australian Turkish Muslim woman who lives in Australia that has a lot of Western ideologies, right? So, but in this book, she chose to practice Islamic principles despite the ideologies that have been introduced. We can see in the excerpt of chapter 24 where she said, I woke up in the morning before dawn to pray. This shows that she practices prayer, and this statement shows that she prays subuh prayer. So there also scenes there where she reject her colleagues' invitation for drinking alcohol and so on. That we can also see it as much challenging stereotypes against Muslims. In the book chapter 16, where she in the sense of where she get a response from many participants in the online dating. One man says, so when you say you're Muslim, you wear the tea towel on your head because I really had that. It's oppressive. From this segment, I understand that the tea towel here represents the hijab. So, the tea towel sounds like a mockery towards her, and he also said that wearing hijab is oppressive, which is a stereotype that are common in Western society. So the Esma responds to the man with a sarcasm answers. She said, I occasionally wear a tea towel on my head. I've been known to wear a tablecloth and neck too. I'm very oppressed and degraded and in need of rescue. I will say I am isolated given I was born here. This statement, this excerpt, shows the obvious sarcasm towards the man and shows the challenge and protection towards the Muslim society and challenging the stereotype against Muslims. For the next point that can be seen in this book is empowerment versus cultural expectation. We can see in this book where they challenge the expectation of women in marriage. For example, in chapter 18 from the grammar that said, hurry up, get married and start your life. This implied for the cultural expectation of women that life only begin after marriage. Uh, so Esma and her friend replies with rejections towards the grandma's beliefs, where they say, so my existence until now has been a figment of my imagination. Has it? I'll take my first real breath, love my first real love, cry my first tear when there's a man at my side. My God, I need a bucket. So this shows very clearly her rejection towards the idea where Islam also says about this thing that women can have the rights to be independent and not just for marriage. So the cultural expectation here is not so good towards the woman. We can also see in the next example where Asma bravely reject her mother's persuasion for the unsuitable candidate or for unsuitable man, where he says, I will force myself to settle just to satisfy some arbitrary time limit. I rather die single than be unhappily married. This shows the importance of consent in marriage. This is also open to the conversation or argument where cultural expectation versus Islamic principles. In Islam, marriage is a sacred religious duty, a social commitment that prioritizes love, mutual respect, and compatibility with spouses. However, cultural expectation regarding marriage can sometimes clash with Islamic principles, particularly in areas like arranged marriage and gender roles, like I would say just now like we understand this now. So while not explicitly prohibited, uh, while in arranged marriage, Islam emphasizes consent and free will in marriage, but some cultural expectations tend to force their children and tend to use family influence and prearranged marriage, which conflict with the principle of consent. And we can also relate it in hadith by Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet says, Prophet Muhammad says, a woman without a husband, uh, whether widow or divorced, must not be married until she is consulted, and a virgin must not be married until her permission is sought. Besides that, we can also see the book critiques cultural misinterpretation in marriage, such as men expecting the wife to be pious while they are not living in pious themselves. So we can see in chapter 22 that says about cultural expectation and towards Anil's sister. In the excerpt, it says that she treats Neela's husband like a king. I don't know why, when he's so moody, he can barely get a word out of him. He just grunts hello and wash TV. We can see from this statement that Anil's sister doesn't get the same treatment that she gave to her husband. This shows that this shows that the men expect the wife to be good, but they are not good themselves. There are also already excerpt that says that the mother favored more to the son-in-law instead of her own daughter. She said that her daughter made a wrong decision, or I would say what the daughter is wrong, which is it is a cultural expectation. While in Islam, it should be treated in same treatment. Islamic principle has already said that both men and women are accountable to the same moral standards. We can see many verses that says about it, but we can see in Surah Ar-Rum verse 21 where it says, and one of his signs is that he created for you spouses from among yourselves so that you may find comfort in them. In this verse, it's already explained that the female is not inferior to the male. So from here, we can understand that not only women should be as pious, but the men also need to be pious themselves. So based on these points, we can conclude that the book of No Sex in the City teach us important values, which can be based on Islamic principle. And Islamic values and Islamic principles should not be portrayed as barriers, but as a frame of dignity, self-worth, and also empowerment, even when we live in complex, multicultural modern world. That's all from my presentation. Thank you.